listeners, you get a special treat next time because I think we're going to try to do a in-person podcast recording. So, if you're deciding to leave right now, don't do it. Because next time it's going to be a treat. What were you going to say?
Not so sure that's going to be that different. We don't actually talk any differently like when we're face to face versus over Skype.
Well, my cousin Marissa suggested that we record video as well. So we could release a second thing, which is video, and then have us, talking, and you're pretty animated when you get going. Not that anybody would necessarily want to see our ugly mugs, but we potentially could do that. No promises on that. Don't count on that. In fact, I might edit that out just because I don't want to overpromise.
Yeah, I don't know about the whole video thing.
Yeah, probably.
I don't have the software.
You do. You do have the software.
Like just on FaceTime.
It's built into your Mac, yeah. And it records all right. It's not great, but
Right.
maybe it's just my hopes that somebody will want to look at our faces. So I sent you some homework. I was like, you probably. When was the last time you had homework? Like 10 years ago? No. Probably. Yeah.
When Jeremiah was living with us, it felt like we had homework
Oh
all
yeah,
the time.
your nephew. Yeah. Your other nephew. I don't miss it, but I do miss school because I miss the whole learning aspect of it.
Yeah, I don't really. Just because I've taken learning to be a personal venture of mine, I feel like I get way more done if I am actually engaged in it.
Mm-hmm. That's true, yeah.
And I never really did have a very good study group for what I was doing at the time, and now it seems way more beneficial to get onto forums and things like that,
or Wikipedia pages.
Well, I can't do what I was doing in college in Wikipedia, the advanced mathematics and the physics and everything like that. It didn't talk about example problems and everything like that. So if you get on the physics forums and stuff like that, you can actually do thermodynamics or Brownian motion, or look at some of the problems that are done for
gravity wells. Ooh.
Yeah.
Was that a plug?
Yeah.
Math plug.
So, just trying to think of
it's like physics.
Field equations are usually pretty easy, and really that's all a gravity well is just a field equation.
Well, don't tell the listeners that. Most of them don't even know that it's not a complex physics thing.
Well,
we're complex and high-minded here at Gravity Well Podcast.
It is if you're going to take in relativistic things, then it's very complex.
Okay. Well, right. Relativity, that whole thing is just weird.
It's pretty awesome, actually.
Anyway, back to what I was saying. We derailed a bit, but I sent you some homework to do. I put a couple links in. I always want to say doobly-doo. If you're a YouTube watcher from 2009 on, and you want, there's some of the popular YouTubers. They say a link in the doobly-doo, and they point towards the description.
Yeah.
And they mean description. So there's a link in the doobly-doo of this video that I had been watching, an article where Elon Musk, he's the one of the most famous entrepreneurs in the world. He's the creator of Tesla Motors. He was basically saying that he thinks within, I don't know what he say, 20, 50 years, that maybe 100 years, that all human driving is probably going to be outlawed.
Yeah, that's what he was speculating about. He
I
actually
think he's right.
He hedged his bet in the sense of he said, actually, we at Tesla Motors will obviously support the option that people can drive their own cars.
Right. He said that he wants that to be a thing,
but that most likely that probably governments in the future will probably outlaw it.
Yeah, and I totally think that's true because it makes complete sense. For one thing, insurance companies don't have to pay large amounts for cars that drive themselves because they're going to never crash. And or most of the time never crash, and why would we put that risk on ourselves?
It's more likely that, it's what CP Gray was like basically saying is that it's not that they won't ever crash. It's just that as soon as they crash less than human beings by some factor, like
They'll be safer.
if we crash, 1 out of every 100 attempts at a road or something like that, as long as like automated cars only crash whenever 500 like attempts on the road, they'll replace.
Right. So the video, the thing he's talking about, it's a video by CGP Gray. Uh, he does like kind of educational videos, and they're very concise and to the point, and very very well done. There will also be a link down in the doobly doo, and he basically was saying that, exactly what Ben was saying. Once you have cars that are safer than humans, makes sense, right? We'll be replaced.
Yeah, so and this is an important factor to know because nothing that you are going to build is going to be foolproof. There's always going to be the beach ball or the falling rock off of a hillside or something like that that could
That
potentially
screws up your car.
right and is something that like the car will be unanticipating, like especially like if you ever go like around Klamath Falls, they have like the whole mountainside where
Which please don't.
beware of
Don't
falling
go.
rocks.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And if a rock falls in the middle of the road, all of a sudden, a computer's not really usually programmed to
Equipped for that.
deal
I
with
think
that.
eventually they probably would be. Like eventually they would program in. Oh, okay. This is a thing that happens once in 100,000.
Yeah, some
Car
sort of
accidents.
times. Well, it won't really matter because the thing is that as long as the automated car handles the situation even better than like a
A
regular
person
driver,
could.
then it won't matter. Like it won't matter that the automated car gets in an accident because it'll be like, well, the human driver always gets in an accident. The automated driver only gets in an accident, sometimes.
Okay, so I was talking to a friend of mine a couple weeks ago about this idea of like, cars being replaced with automated cars, and they were really skeptical about it. They were like, "No, I don't think so." But it just seems like really obvious to me that like,
Well,
they will as soon as they can. Like I want one.
I think
This
last
seems
time
amazing.
I think that last time we talked about this, I ended up having to play the devil's advocate because even though I actually
Because we both
support
agree too
automated
much.
cars, there is a whole bunch of questions about liability and things like that, and you have to understand that like we don't always do the logical thing, right? There are powerful
No, that's true.
lobbyist groups who may not want, cars to be automated. Now, I don't know I don't know necessarily why like car makers would not want automated cars. It seems like they probably, I guess, wouldn't want automated cars if for some reason they couldn't build competing software. Like if Tesla or Google had the best software for AI software for automated cars and the direction of the markets were going towards that, and something like, Ford couldn't.
I don't think that would happen.
Oh, really?
No, no, no. Because
So
because they'll be able to hire the programmers. There's enough programmers out there who are smart enough. I think they could do it.
you can make the same argument about electrical cars versus gasoline cars.
What do you mean?
It's like the car companies should be able. If one car company can make, electric cars, then some other pre-established car company. I'm getting distracted by your eyebrow.
I'm sorry. Earlier, earlier we were having a conversation. Well, less Ben was having a conversation, and more I was talking about my eyebrow skills because I've been, like Jack Black does the eyebrow wave. This is totally off topic, but he does this eyebrow wave like in School of Rock, and it's always interested me. And I've finally gotten to a place where I can control my eyebrows to kind of do an eyebrow wave. I'm getting better at it, but I'm still not as smooth as Jack Black. I mean, he's like an amazing eyebrow waver. And so I just noticed that I was kind of naturally making eyebrow motions, and so I decided
So you're practicing your eyebrow motions?
I noticed that I was already doing it because it's like part of my facial expressions, but I was just like making them go a little bit crazy, and so I totally derailed you. I'm sorry about that. I will try to keep my eyebrows under control. I think you're probably right about, like, you know, the electric versus gas. Not all companies can make them, but it's easier to hire a team of programmers than it is to design a whole entire car.
You're not really understanding like what I'm trying to say. Is it's the whole thing of like, if it's cheaper to fight it on a legal or lobbyist basis rather than develop a new market, then businesses will do that, even if it doesn't really make a lot of
Yeah.
sense in the long run, because it's
They're about the money. Money, money, money.
well, I mean, it's what gets really frustrating when you're talking to some sort of right winger, like conservatists, like when they are saying, "Oh, okay, well, we should totally have laissez-faire economic strategies," and you're just like, "Okay, you have to understand something about businesses, is which they don't actually care about free market systems." And it's one of those things where, like, if it's cheaper to go the lobbyist lawyer route and basically try to stop it that way, like, of course you won't stop the
That's so
eventual like
disappointing.
market, but that's basically what has happened before in certain markets.
Well, I can always hope that Tesla Motors will be there to make their self-automated cars because, oh my gosh, I want that. I do not want to have to drive anymore this weekend when I'm heading up to where you are near Seattle. I want to get in my car, press a few buttons, and then read on my way. That'd be lovely. I'm obviously probably going to do an audiobook. Hey, if you are an audiobook website out there who's happening to listen and want to fund us, send me a line. I don't think there is anybody since we don't have that many views yet.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, that'd be great. I want to press a few buttons and be on my way.
This is another problem with automated cars, is that it will probably encourage people to live farther away from the metropolitan cities and will probably on average raise the average commuter time, which is not a good thing for the environment. It's also not a very good
Okay.
thing for our roads in general, and also it basically puts the burden on both production and maintenance of basically vehicles and our transportation systems.
Yeah, there are probably also like a lot of unforeseen consequences of that thing, but like, you know, it's kind of like what are we going to do? It's obviously more dangerous to have a human driver, so we'll probably do the automated driving thing.
Well, it's not totally clear that automated driving is safer because it's not
It is
implemented.
absolutely clear, as
No,
CGP Grey argues in his video. It
it
is totally clear.
it is not clear yet. It's speculative.
Well, they already have Google cars that,
Yeah.
you know, have been tested for hundreds of thousands of miles
Yeah.
and have gotten in significantly fewer crashes than an average or above average driver.
Again, you're
Like,
not.
they've gotten basically no crashes.
You have to look at the integration, because what will probably happen is you'll get to a point where people will start anticipating which cars are automated. And it's one of those things where, like, as long as there are basically cars to be driven, you're going to have some sort of reckless asshole out there who's going to basically be banking on the fact that he can cut off yay car at yay off ramp, because he can basically trust the automated car
That's an
is.
argument about human sucking at driving.
That's all I'm saying is that, like, you want to say that, like, because there's been scientific evidence that basically supports that they are safer, that they are in fact safer, but that's an evidence. It's not really it's projected about what will be. You actually have to go there and
Yeah.
do it to actually find out. That's the difference between scientific evidence versus scientific theory.
I agree.
We had this
Okay,
conversation.
we did off air because
Yes.
it's very nuanced, but okay, you're right. Technically, I'm hopeful though, and I think based on like what evidence we do have, it makes sense. It makes sense to me.
Automated transportation is unprecedented for the human species. Like, just basically, like the sort of transportation that we're talking, right? Like, probably, goods and commuting. Like, you're basically talking about commuting traffic. So we don't actually know what's going to happen. Now, I do believe that automated systems will be safer, but I can't say that I know it. I can only say that I believe it. And
Well, the assumption is when you say something like you know it, knowing stems from belief, right? Because it's pretty much the same thing. No human can know anything; they just believe things. So when I say it in a like a like we're just talking here, uh, of course, what I mean is I believe it. You don't. I don't know. I don't know that I'm wearing pajamas right now. Hey, it's early in the morning. Don't judge. It's not. It's not like 3 in the afternoon.
right, yeah,
But I don't know for sure. I mean, that sounds crazy to some people. People do not. Some people don't understand that. But like,
right.
even though I have lots of evidence for it, I could be in the Matrix and they could be sucking out. It's actually it comes back to that chicken thing I was saying earlier. How do you know chicken tastes like chicken? It's like in the Matrix, Like how do you know? Maybe the program got it wrong. And chicken. That's why so many things taste like chicken.
Right.
Anyway.
No, it's I actually feel that like what you have to say no has to basically be backed up by like scientific theory, not necessarily scientific evidence.
Like we know there's gravity, and we know that there's that evolution takes place.
Yeah, it's basically that it's not so much that it's that we know. It's more the thing of like this is completely consistent with repeatable and redundant information. So it goes to
Okay.
that rigor.
Yeah.
And then I'm
Unprecedented.
willing to say I know. If it's something speculative like automated cars being safer, which is not yet proven by any source of like the imagination, just because it's not repeatable, it's not
No.
yet redundant. They're basically repeating it and repeating it and repeating it, and you have to basically then implement it on scale. Once you basically have it on scale and you generate like I don't know, maybe like a half a year to 2 years worth of information, then it'll be like scientific fact that automated cars are
Right.
like,
Right.
then I'm willing to say that I know it. But it's one of those things where like you still have to basically say, okay, well, let's say I don't know that automated cars are safer. Would it be wise to go in that direction? And you do have to say that, yeah, I mean, human beings are actually pretty sucky drivers, and
Mm-hmm.
we do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of irresponsible things. And anybody who's like ever driven for any like extended amount of times, you quickly realize that like most people when they're driving only pay attention to it to a certain degree. It's not like
Yeah. Okay.
they're
When
not
you're
taking
when
they're
you're a
not
teenager.
yeah, like usually like early teenagers will have the problem of being distracted if there's other adolescents in the car, but then like the younger driver will pay more attention to
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah, like I particularly remember when I was a teenager and learning how to really know all of driving. That like I was paying attention because I had to learn it, and I feel like I was probably much more aware. And maybe this isn't a good thing, but now I definitely much more. If I know where I'm going already, it is much more autopilot where my body just does where I want it to go. And I try to pay attention. I try to be an alert driver, of course, always.
there's
But
been studies about teenage drivers that basically show that they pay more attention to the road than adults do, but they make worse decisions because of experience. And
right,
the
right.
only
Hmm.
the only time that it's significantly bad is when they have other teenagers in the car. Like that's like when they are at their worst. Like
That's pretty funny.
because usually their added attention usually balances with the less experience, right? Older drivers have more experience, but
Because I think the only time I've like ever done anything to my car where it's like gotten anywhere close to an accident, I was like, were there teenagers in the car at the time? All right, the three times that I kind of got in a wreck, I guess. Because like the worst thing that's ever happened to me is I hit a lady. It was like going into school zone, dry day, clear day, everything was fine, but it was cool, and so I was wearing a stocking cap, and lady is driving down the road. I'm pretty good distance behind her. I'm very careful about that. Lots of people drive way too close, especially Washington drivers. What is the deal with that? You go from the Oregon border to the Washington border, and it's like going from like ants marching to bees swarming. That's like, okay, anyway. So, following this lady, and apparently at the very moment that I'm pulling my stocking cap down over my face to put it in my lap, because, you put heat on in your car and you get warmer. At that very moment, a kid decides to run out, and the lady slams on her brake. It was already school zone, so we were only going like 20 miles an hour anyway.
Right.
And at the very last second, I see her, and I slam on the brakes, but it's just enough to like bump her, and like, it like moves your head. And
right, yeah.
You're like, whoa. And so like on my car, small crack in my bumper. On her car, nothing.
Yeah.
She then later got $13,000 from my insurance company. Isn't that lovely?
Wow, $13,000?
Yes, that's right. Claiming pain. There's nothing I could really do about that. We were fine. Just we were totally fine. It was not. It didn't make anything. It didn't do anything on our car. Anyway, whatever the case. Okay, so that was one accident. I kind of think of just kind of like a misfortune type thing. We've talked before. I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast, but it's basically like us as a species saying like, nobody's actually to blame, but it's actually just fate or coincidence or unluck, and that's something we kind of need to get to as a society. We'll get to that. I want to bring that up later. You can go on about that. So I want to finish my story. The other two times. Okay, so by the way, teenager was in the car. It was my girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
The other time, I kind of ran over a giant rock because oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm telling this story. My parents still don't know about this, so when my mom does listen to this, she's gonna be rolling her eyes. But basically, what happened was, I was on cross country team in my high school. Yeah. Late night, after practice was over. I was kind of getting ready to pick my sister up because she was also on the team. We're heading out, and I pulled the car around, and lined with the roads at my high school were some pretty big rocks. I would say, half a meter in size,
yep,
roughly. And, that way cars couldn't drive through the lawns. And my sister and her then boyfriend were like, kind of running behind my car, and I was kind of like, making them run because it was funny at a slow pace, so they couldn't get up to the car. But I wasn't paying attention to where I was going. I was looking in my rearview mirror, so I kind of ran over one of those rocks, and it kind of, there's like some plastic under your car that keeps your car a little bit quieter.
Yeah.
And totally tore that up. I just had to pull that out. So my car is permanently louder. I've yet to replace those plastic bits. So second case, teenager. Definitely teenager. Third time, I was with my sister in a Taco Bell parking lot. We were getting ready to pull out, and there was a truck in front of us, a very large truck. And because of the Taco Bell parking lot, like cement curbs, the truck did not turn out wide enough to be able to like exit.
Right.
And so he couldn't move any farther forward because the curbs were so close together and his truck was so big. So he just decides, well, I'll just solve this problem. I'm going to put it in reverse and back up and try again. But he didn't check his rearview mirror. Because if he had, he would have seen that I was in his rearview mirror. Parked behind him, not really knowing why he had stopped. Because I didn't really, I'm just driving. Like, I don't know why your gigantic truck can't fit through the tiny cement. So, anyway, but that one wasn't really my fault. And he totally backed up my hood. It crunched like an accordion. But there was a teenager in the car at the time. My sister was with me. So of all the times I'm like, teenagers, was it really a teenager's fault? Probably only the second one was like actually teenager driving. Anyway, so yes, what you were going to rant about was whether or not we're responsible as a species enough to basically say no one's really to blame here. It's really just an accident. It's a thing of fate. There's nothing you really could have done. There's no one truly at fault.
Right. In modern day society, there is no such thing as an accident.
Right, legally.
Like somebody's always liable. Somebody's always basically, been negligent.
Right. Which if you think about, it's pretty much bullshit. Like it's not.
Well,
It's
it's
not
one of
really
those
true,
things that
right?
I don't think it's completely obvious to most people. And you can always what's funny is that you can always make the negligent argument. It's like, well, had you left to work for 5 minutes earlier, then you wouldn't have been there when,
Or had you checked your brakes when they went out? Like, yeah.
right. It's just like, how did you do your 30 mile an hour or 30,000 mile car check every 30,000 miles, or did you miss it by 1,000 miles because that meant you were like possibly negligent that that you didn't check your car. Right now, like the way that we deal with like possible accidents, it's just like no one really wants to say that like that is completely natural.
Well, we're probably going to have to come to that kind of point if we have automated cars, because we'll have no other option. If two automated cars get in a car crash, whose fault is that? The software engineers? Like,
right. And
it's silly.
Yeah, well, that's probably a liability argument that will be had in courts. And it's kind of like something really stupid could happen too, where if like some automated car for some reason like has a computer crash or something, and the automated car like runs into a school bus full of children, let's say, and causes a school bus full of children to like run off the road into a river and all the school children die. That could end automated cars in America for some reason like that, where you're just like, okay, that's a very sort of fluke circumstantial thing. One, computer car crashes don't happen that often. That it ran into a bus and the bus went off in the river and killed all school children is very circumstantial.
You also might as well make it explode.
I mean, no, you might as well make it explode.
You have such a terrible scenario that it crashes into the river.
But the thing is that like we tend to make decisions based on shit like that, where we're just like, oh no, it could kill school children in the future, so automated cars are bad, and we make those kind of decisions about things very
bad.
often.
Not a fan.
Well,
so the other
just saying.
Human race, do better.
Yeah.
So I'd like to take this moment talking about the human race in the podcast to say, if you're part of the human race and you're listening to this, well, first of all, if you're not part of the human race and you're listening to this, how? But if you are part of the human race and you're listening to this, take a moment to suck in that air and breathe life and appreciate it, and just be positive. Think before you act. Be a responsible human being. Be an upright individual. Okay, all right, enough of motivation. What I really wanted to talk about is also in CGP Gray's video, which is in the doobly-doo. He, besides talking about automated cars, which is already fascinating.
It was part of that because he was mostly talking about automation, and automated cars are part of that.
Right. He was really talking about what would happen if we did have automated cars, which is that so many jobs would be gone. So many jobs.
If it was widespread, as basically Elon Musk was speculating, which is that like no one got to drive their cars, then certain transportation jobs would be to go the way of buggy whip drivers.
Mm-hmm. And CGP was making the argument, which I quite agree, which is that for one thing, that all the jobs are going to go, whether you are a lawyer and you're got a blue collar, or even doctors.
Well, you should probably talk about like what the video was. So the video,
it was called "Humans Need Not Apply."
Right, and it was explaining which jobs will most likely be able to be automated like in the next 100 years. And so like 20 years out, it'll probably start being cars. 50 years out, it'll, already basically a lot of Wall Street jobs, like the traders themselves
Stock
have
markets
been
and
automated, where basically machines are buying and selling stocks and bonds and futures and commodities. And like, so 50 years out, doctors might, be automated. And just looking at the job numbers that could possibly see being automated, and that's like
it's a lot.
yeah, the main thing that he really wanted to get at is that like a lot of people would see unskilled labor as the jobs that would probably be automated, but he was actually making an argument that no, this will
All of
be,
the most common jobs will be.
you'll actually see it along professional and also creative lines. It's just like there's no real barrier that says that, when all the food and all the services are basically automated, that, you can't have a computer necessarily make music or do art either. Now I do think that those will probably
Be the
remain
longest.
human. Well, I just think that like that will probably remain in the human market. But like like he was saying that like even now, like you can,
Find programs that make music and
or write, like that you have probably read an article generated by a bot.
this is the one thing that I think will take the longest and be the furthest away from automating, is because until we have artificial intelligence, which we will, I think, that creative human endeavors will be hard, very hard to replicate. You can get away with a lot, but no machine can write a novel. No machine can make a movie. Uh, oh, that's another homework project I have for you pretty soon, because we got to talk about it on this podcast. It's totally related to this very thing we're talking about. It is the movie Her, Her, Her. It's about a guy who gets an operating system that has artificial AI, and his kind of like relationship with this computer, and such an interesting story, totally related. But I think creative endeavors are the ones that's going to be hard, really, really hard to replicate for a long time, just because until machines can like develop new thoughts, they can learn at the moment. They can learn minor things, but it's too hard to replicate things like that.
That probably, when it comes to like novels and things like that, computers will probably copycat different motifs and themes and characters and be able to like piecemeal something in sort of a copy paste kind of methodology.
I agree. I don't think it'll quite be the same though. I'm hoping it won't be, because that's like really important to me. I think it's kind of important that humans make things part of like our heritage and our.
He talked about it a little bit, but a lot of people don't think about how much the nature of our economy has probably changed in like the last 400 to 1,000 years, where most of the labor force at one time needed to only focus on food. Like food was it. Like in order to feed ourselves, we basically had to have 90 to 95% of ourselves.
That was the jobs.
That
Yeah.
was the job. Like make food. Like that was it. Now now
Survive.
something like 2% of people make food,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that will go down a lot. Especially since like we're adding more and more automation into like farm and food preparation, so that will actually decrease. Now, what I think is sort of interesting about CP Gray's video is when he starts talking about unemployment, and he talks about the nature of thinking that like, oh well, there'll always be jobs for human beings to do. When you start talking about like the price that automation comes, it'll actually, I do believe that it'll probably get to the point where like most jobs will just be cheaper to build a robot and automate it
Mm-hmm.
to do
Mm-hmm.
it. They don't really discuss this in a lot of sci-fi genres, but it's one of those things, is like if you go into the Star Trek Federation world and you say, okay, so what kind of government do they have?
That's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
That particular series.
In that in that show, they don't really talk about it a lot, but they have a socialist government because there isn't really a capitalist market to. There isn't goods and services that you make that you would then sell. Like the services that you would do are really human endeavors, like things that really matter to you. And that's why they have the Federation, and that's why they do exploration, and that's why pretty much everyone in the science, in the in the Star Trek world is either an artisanal sort of crafter, creator, like
Mm-hmm.
Jean-Luc Picard's brother is an artisanal whiner, right? Or and I think that'll probably still be true in the future. Is that even though we'll have, food will be automated and it'll probably be pretty cheap, you'll probably still be able to buy, hand grown, organic, artisanal heirloom tomatoes. You know what I'm saying? Like,
We already have that shit. We
yeah,
already
we
have
already
like
have that sort of thing,
gluten free, organic. Yeah.
and a lot of people, like, when they start getting into like discussions of like the difference between communism and socialism, most of them really believe in the government's role to play a part in socialism, which is actually usually more of a form of communism, because then you have basically government distributing wealth under the guise of equality. But Marx, when he wrote the Communist Manifesto, he was under the belief that market economy would collapse. Now he thought it would collapse because of the injustice of oligarchies and monopolies and things like that.
Which
And
I happen to agree with. We'll come back to that for
no,
sure.
I don't really agree with that. And if you read Marx, man, he was like a
The
very angry and
injustice.
bitter man. But but anyway, in the Star Trek universe, it's just the thing is that like they don't really talk about it, but if you ever did get to a point where pretty much human beings are not employable, where there's just really nothing for us to do,
Mm-hmm.
then that does have a problem with market economies. Then it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to just like whoever controls the robot companies and the robot maintenance companies? Are those the only people that are going to make money? Like, is that the only like how are you going to distribute food? Because the thing is that if like for some reason if companies are so stiff handed with like the monies and the goods and the service and everything, you're gonna start getting more and more sort of plebeian mobs.
Oligarchies.
No, you're gonna have like rioting and stuff like that, and
Right, right, right.
you can already kind of see this when you're just like the whole minimum wage laws that are like being
Currently
argued,
going on. Right.
and that
I
gets
think it's
into a whole
telling.
it gets into a
It's a whole other thing.
whole other thing.
Oh my gosh.
But
So
it's one
yeah,
of those things
let's
that
not go
like
there.
but if it does get to the thing where it's like, yeah, pretty much any sort of good or service is automated, like
What are we gonna do? Yeah.
then you have to start thinking about, okay, well, then that means that your crappy little poem that you wrote needs to make you like, a couple $1,000 so that way you can buy oranges. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
we're
Mm-hmm.
going to have to start valuing a lot of different sort of human endeavors.
Okay, so I already feel this way. I already think this is a thing because at my job, I mean, obviously it's not quite a thing because not all the jobs are getting replaced. But every day I think about this because my job is so pointless. I work in retail. I stock shelves, which is somewhat useful, right? I'm giving access to people to whatever goods they so very much need with their thousands of choices in facial creams and shampoos and soaps. This is what I stock every day. And candies. So many different types of candies. I work for a very large store. But most of my job, probably 75% of my job, is moving those tiny boxes and bottles a few inches so they're at the front of the shelf. If you've ever worked in retail, you know what I mean. Some places don't care that much about it. Like I used to work at Staples, and because of the nature of like what they had on the shelves and stuff, it was something that you kind of just did.
It was okay if it was okay if the ink cartridge thing was slightly back. It didn't need to be right at
Yeah,
the edge.
yeah, and I appreciated that about Staples. They did it at night, and it wasn't a big deal. But this is most of my job, and I'm sitting there doing this job every day, and I'm just, what am I doing? Like, this is nothing. This is so meaningless. I'm I am not helping anybody. This is like totally a thing that just like giant corporations are sucking money off of me because the customers, I actually, okay, so I found this out about my job is that there are about 350 people who work for my store. It's a pretty large amount. And my store makes $2 million a week profit.
Yeah.
That's after everybody else is paid.
Right.
Okay. And we've talked about this off the podcast, but like some of that goes to like the stockholders and everything. But $2 million a week, and I make, $10 an hour.
Right.
This is crazy to me. I understand that they can, but I don't really think that they should. I think they should probably, pay people a little more, increase their standard of living, make happier, probably more loyal employees. Seems like a benefit, like, for the company.
Well, the thing is that they don't need loyal employees because
I
the
know.
way
They
that
can replace you.
Yeah, the way the economy is right now, they can just simply replace you. And
Which they will with me soon. I am looking for other things. I'm desperately looking for other things.
This is one of the things that I actually worry about when because that's a low skill job basically. So this is one of the things that I worry about, like because this has been the history of unions and low labor jobs in general, is that when they basically say, hey, you should raise the minimum wage, and they do, or the unions say you should pay us more, a lot of companies will look at the capital investment to automate, and they will automate those jobs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
replace me with a robot, basically.
Maybe that's a good thing. You won't have to work your job.
I think it is.
But the same thing is that low skilled labor will not be in the future of most people. Like that's going to go the way of the dinosaurs.
Oh my gosh, you just made me think of something that I saw on the internet. We're gonna get a little off topic here for a second because I just wanted to. I saw, okay, so like on Reddit somebody posted, like, it was obviously like a teacher who's like, identify the name of this dinosaur. It was like a grade school type assignment, and it was like had the names of the dinosaurs at the top and then the dinosaur with a blank line underneath, and the paper that the teacher had received back had X's on all the names, and then like it crossed out words in the assignment like dinosaurs, and it was like, these are lies made by the government. Read the Bible. There's no such thing as dinosaurs. Like, dinosaurs were made by the devil. And the teacher was just like, what? Like really? So that was so vivid for me. So vivid in my head that like somebody could believe that and be like, no, there weren't any dinosaurs. That I had to. You said dinosaurs, and man, that popped into my head so quick.
Well, I grew up in a household without dinosaurs.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
You were without dinosaurs, like you just weren't told about them, or like you were actively told that they were a devil lie?
No, I was basically told that they existed at the same time of man and that they went extinct around the time of Noah's flood.
What?
Because it's important to know that like dinosaurs aren't really in the Bible, and the Bible has man was always in existence. Like we were his creation God's creation on the seventh day. So for the entire history of the earth, humans have lived in our current state on the face of the planet. So there is no prehistory necessarily. Like and all of history is covered like in the Bible, because you have Joseph begot what's his name and something begot what's his name, and the beginning was covered, right? It covers the beginning until the end of times, it's all covered, So,
It's so bizarre to me. I was raised in a place where scientific literacy and reason were really highly valued, and I so appreciate that because it means I'm skeptical about the world, and I think you've definitely come to that place, come the opposite way from your parents with the dinosaurs. Anyway, I think I've burned you out.
mm,
Uh,
I'm not at my best today.
That's okay. That's all right. I was doing good today. I was carrying things right along. So I think we'll stop there. And
Okay.
thanks, guys, for listening.
This has been a Gravity Well podcast. Thank you for listening and have a lovely day. We'll see you next time.